Hi and welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about Eastern India. And like we did in the earlier videos, we're going to talk about the history, geography and society of Eastern India. One cannot talk about the geography of this region without mentioning Brahmaputra. This mighty river is so big that it has the second largest discharge of water, next only to the Amazon. The north bank of the river ends where the Himalaya rises and plateaus off in Tibet. The south bank of the river ends abruptly where the Patkai hill rises and drops into the jungles of Myanmar. Eastern India is wilderness, wildlife, tribal population, and a lot of nature. Very little historical research has been done to understand this region's past. Written history of this region begins as late as 13th century. This is a time when a group of people from the Airavati river plains in Myanmar, they brave the hills of the Patkai region, come all the way down to the Brahmaputra plains and set up a kingdom called the Ahoms. This is Mahabharata, a Hindu epic which is revered by most people in India. One of its main characters, called Bhishma, is said to have come from this region. Eventually, the Ahoms adopted Hinduism. They built gigantic temples and monasteries, Hindu monasteries, along the banks of Brahmaputra river and in the islands. Their rule lasted several hundred years until the British took over from them, because this region was strategic for British interest in China, Burma, Tibet, as well as in India. The Ahom rule is considered significant because between the 10th and the 17th century, most part of India came under Islamic rule, whereas Eastern India was completely secured by the Ahoms, who resisted Islamic rule. After independence, India had to stitch together many pieces to form a nation. And the pieces included many tribal kingdoms of Eastern India, where the notion of owning land and resources never existed. All resources were owned by tribal communities, whereas India became a parliamentary democracy. As a result, Eastern India could not come to terms with the constitution. There were uprisings and insurgency operations, and counterinsurgency operations by the armed forces of India. Conflict continued in many parts for several decades. Eventually, both have come together. Eastern India has a variety of interesting and unique culture. On the northern slopes, you have the Bhutanese culture, which is quite similar to the Tibetan cultures. Further east is inhabited by hundreds of different ethnic groups. The Adi tribes and the Apatani tribes are the most distinct of all of them. The southern slopes are home for 16 different Naga tribes. These are tribal people who live in a very highly evolved tribal society. In the 18th century, British acquired the knowledge of tea plantation from China. They converted the entire region of the Assam plains into tea plantation. Today, this region is a major tea growing area of the country. The northern slopes of Eastern India has a strong Buddhist culture because of the influence and its proximity to Tibet. The rest of the hills, both on the northern slopes and the southern slopes, is 100% Christian. Lutheran Christianity was introduced here by American missionaries in the 18th century. The Brahmaputra plains is home to Hindu culture. The borderlands of Bangladesh has a strong Islamic influence. On the plains, the people eat a lot of rice and fish. The people on the hills eat more exotic food, rare birds, animals, insects, bamboo shoots, honey, and a variety of forest produce. Though there is scope for development, it does not really take off because of lack of entrepreneurs. On the bright side, there have been quite a few socio-economic reforms and developmental initiatives. This region is now a hotspot for experiments, particularly inclusive development. This region's art is not just for appreciation and for leisure. Rather, it's part of their tradition and folk ways. It's integrated into their lives. To give you a better sense of what I'm saying, let me leave you with a piece that was performed by a group of weavers. These women were not performing for us. Rather, they were actually weaving. And in order to weave, they have to sing. Yes, that's how art and folk ways are integrated in this region.
Tham lo yang ko wa ko toi ha pa tham lo yang ko